Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back to another class. This should be like the final class for our summer boot camp. And the last few things we'll be learning for this summer boot camp. Of course, for the summer boot camp, we are working towards you guys learning the very basics of, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And now we want to wrap up with refreshing on events. We've touched base on events. We've touched base on functions during the last class. So I'll just give a brief, detailed explanation about functions, events. We'll also talk about conditions and also comparison operators. All right. So we'll start with functions. I want to remind you guys how we used functions during our last class. You guys remember our color guessing game, right? So in our color guessing game, remember that we also treated alerts, we treated prompts, what else did we treat? We treated how to use the document.getElement by ID to manipulate text content inside of your HTML. So that's a refresher based on last week's class. So we want to refresh on functions, right? And inside of our slide, we said that what is a function? A function is a block of code that does something for you. So during our last class, we created a function, a make guess function, right? To help us create a guessing of colors for our buttons, right? And inside of that function, we use the alert, we use the document.getElement by ID to be able to manipulate the text content. So let's do a preview of what that looks like so that you guys don't feel like, what are you saying? I can't remember what you're saying, right? So with our function, we were able to do a make a guess, right? You guessed right. You guessed red, great job. You guessed blue, great job. You guessed green, great job, right? So it was with this function, we're able to make all of that manipulation inside of HTML. So in our function, like I said in my definition here, it is a block of code. It's just one block of code that does something. So for it to work, you have to call it when you need it. So now for the guess function to work here, we called our guess function, our make a guess function inside of our HTML so that it could work. Because even if we just create the function, it's not going to do anything, right? It's not going to work. So look at a function as, let me give an analogy here. A function is just like saying you are creating, like a robot. You are telling a robot to do something for you, right? Instead of you having to do it yourself manually multiple times, you've created like a robot to be able to do something for you, okay? So that's why we use a function in our last class to avoid repeating this content individually. If you remember, we created a separate alert document.getElement by ID for button red. We did the same for button blue. We also did the same for button green. So imagine if you had 100 buttons, that would be very, very daunting for you to start typing each of those blocks of code individually like 100 times. So we are saying that you want to type 4 lines of code in 100 places. You imagine that would be very stressful, right? So that's why a function is very important. You create it once, you use it multiple times. Like I gave the analogy, you create a robot, you can use the robot to do multiple things, right? To run that errand that you want it to run severally. So that's a refresher on functions. So like I said in my slide, I said, think of it like a recipe. You only need to follow it when you need to cook, okay? So this is another example of what a function is. It's a block of code. Inside of it, you tell it what you want it to do. So if I say, make me a conflicts function, I want that function to make me a conflicts, right? And I will write the steps for it to make me a conflict. Is that right? So inside of my block of code, I can say, alert, you need to get milk. prompt. What kind of milk do you want? Document.getElement by ID. I want, just like playing around with whatever you want that function to do for you. So that's a very simple way to understand function. So like I said, after you write your function, you need to call it for it to run, okay? So like our example here, like that I showed you earlier on in this video, we called the make guess function that we wrote inside of our JavaScript here, which is this one. We called it inside of our button function. So now you are having like two videos explaining function. In the previous video, I explained function. Today, I'm also trying to like give you guys a refresher on what function is, okay? So the next thing is, what is an event? All right. In JavaScript, events are very, very important, okay? Events are like, you tell them to do something. It's something that happens, like, clicking a button, hovering over a mouse, or typing or something like that. And we've used events since the beginning of this class. So that's also another refresher. We've used events since the beginning of this class. Here now, we are telling the button that on an on-click event, you do what? You click on a red button, right? What does it do when you click on a red button? This is an example of what an event will happen. Without the on-click event, if you click on this red button, nothing is going to happen, okay? So we are using that on-click event to call our make guess function. Let me break it down again. We created an on-click event inside of our button to let the button know that we want an event to happen. And what is that event that is going to happen? It is that it should make a guess when this red button is clicked upon. Do you understand? So that's a very like simple way to understand on-click events. So that's another refresher. There are other types of events. So I want you guys to like explore, because I want to make this video very short. I don't want to elongate this video, because I want you guys to explore. I want you guys to make more research. JavaScript is very, very broad, and everything cannot be done in this class. JavaScript is a very, very broad programming language. So not just JavaScript as well, HTML, CSS too. There are so many elements that we've not treated in this class that I want you guys to like take that extra step. If you want to be a world-class game developer or a programmer, you have to be prepared to know how to use the internet to search for things that you want to do in your programming. So you have to know how to use Google to ask questions. You have to know how to use Google to like, make research on when something is not working very well, okay? So that's a little bit about on-click events. I don't want to go too deep into that. All right. So now, the next thing I would like to touch base with you guys on is called comparison operator. So let me show you my next slide. Okay, I already mentioned on click, on mouse. These are examples of other events. On key down is when you want to press a key down. So this is on key down is useful for if you want to build things like you want your game to play some notes, like maybe music notes and things like that. If a user press the G keyboard, the G key on your keyboard, you want it to have a note, right? That's an example of how to use the on key down event. So now this has already been done before in our previous classes. That's just another example. Comparison operator, like I said, comparison operators help us to like compare things. And in JavaScript, I want us to learn the comparison operator first before we move to the if-else statement that I highlighted in your assignment in the previous class. So for comparison operators, there are so many comparison operators in JavaScript. But for the purpose of this class, I'll just shrink it down because I think there are about two more that I didn't include here. So we have the equal to, you can see that it's different from the way we have it in mathematics when we say 2 plus 2 is equals to 4, right? In JavaScript, for you to have your equal to, it has to be 2 equal to, okay? That's how JavaScript understand equal to. So when you say equal to in JavaScript, say for instance, you want to compare something, you want to say, 5 is equal to 5, or 10 is equal to 10, right? Or 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, right? You use the equal to sign, which is this 2 equals to that we see here. All right, that's what it means in JavaScript. So that means that you are trying to compare one on the left side, and you're trying to compare the value on your left side before the equal to, and the value on the right side after the equal to. So in JavaScript, don't forget, the equal to sign is not like the way we have it in mathematics, is like 2 equal to. So it has to be like 2 equals to and equals to be like 5. Okay, so let me show an example of what that looks like here. All right. Say 5 is equal to 5. Okay. This is how you write it in JavaScript, not like this. JavaScript will not understand it this way. All right. So it's best to write it this way. This is the format for writing equal to in JavaScript. Okay. So when you want to say something is not equal to, say for instance, you want to compare 5 on the left side is definitely not equal to 3, right? You write your not equal to with an exclamation mark first and then an equal to sign. So that's how JavaScript understand not equal to. So let me show you that. Say for instance, we want to say 10 is not equal to 3 or 4. Let's just put it that way. Right? This is how JavaScript understand it. You know, like in terms of maybe mathematics or anything like that, in mathematics, you write the equal to and slash, right? But in JavaScript, when you want to write not equal to, this is how you write it, okay? Do not make that mistake. In JavaScript, there's also something called greater than, all right? Like the way we have it in mathematics as well. So when you want to compare, maybe you have 2 users and you say Jane is 10 and John is 5. You know, you say Jane age is greater than John's age, right? So that's an example of how to compare in JavaScript with greater than. So it's just the same as mathematics that we have here. So I want to write that out for you guys to see. 10 greater than 7, right? 10 is greater than 7. So this is how you also write it in JavaScript, okay? So now for the next one, less than. Similarly, in mathematics, you know, when you want to write 3 is less than 5 or 7 or 6, this is how you write it too in JavaScript. All right. So this one is equal to, this is not equal to, greater than, and less than. So these are some of the comparison operators in JavaScript. So let's touch base on the other one. Greater than or equal to. So just as we have it in mathematics, we say 10 is greater than or equal to 10, right? That is all how you also write it in JavaScript. Okay. So let's have some space here. So same as less than or equal to. Less than or equal to. We say 2 is less than or equal to 5. Right? Because 2 is actually less than 5, right? Or equal to 5. 2 is not equal to 5, but at least it is less than 5. So these are same ways that you can use, like it's just similar to mathematics, how you have it. It's just that the only difference here is how JavaScript write the equal to and not equal to, okay? So that's for comparison operators, all right? So let's see an example of what I have here. So if age is less than equal to 18, alert, you can vote. So this is an example of how you can use your JavaScript comparison operator to what? To do what? To write your code in JavaScript. So say, for instance, you want to create a voting machine system, right? And, to vote, you have to, first of all, determine if the voter is of age. Most of the time, to be of age to vote is 18, right? So say, for instance, you want to create that voting machine system. To determine the age of the user, maybe say, for instance, when they log in, you tell them that you've already given your programming language instruction that if age is greater than or equal to 18, they can vote. You create an alert, they can vote. So this if statement is what we're going to treat next so that you can understand what if else statements means. So let's go to our next slide. So in JavaScript, the if else statement is called condition. What did I say? It's called condition. Okay. So they help us to make decision in code. So like the way I showed you in the previous example, that if, okay, say I want to create that voting machine, if the age is greater than or equal to 18, they can vote. But what about when they are not equal to 18? What will happen? That means they are not allowed to do what? To vote. So that's how we tell our programming language to help us, ensure that our voting machine system works. All right. So another example is, say for instance, your game, you design a game, and if your user has a score of greater than 10, they win the game. But if they do not have up to 10, that means they need to try again. Okay. So that's what this block of code means. All right. Let's copy that and paste it in here. So okay, so now we're telling our let's say I want to create a game, we're telling our scoring machine to say, okay, if the score is less than 10, they are a winner. Else, try again. So let me write out the block of code for you so that you can understand what I'm saying. So now let's start with if. To write an if statement, you have to have the statements first, and then whatever condition you want to create inside of the if statement, that's where you type it in your brackets, okay? You type it inside of your brackets. Now, you also create another bracket and press enter. And then in your line of code here, this is where you determine what you want it to display, okay? So then else is another block of condition, okay? Else is another block of condition. So this first example I gave you, say for instance, you don't have anything to compare with, it's just if you want to write, you only use the if statement. But if you want to compare two things, like, okay, let's make this one more advanced than what we had it before. If we don't just want to use the if statement, we want to use the if else statement. We say if age is greater than or equal to 18, then we're alerting them that, oh, you can vote, all right? You can vote, okay? And then we'll close that. Else, in our else block, we're saying that, okay, what if they are not up to 18? What should happen, right? So else, if they're not up to 18, we say alert, you cannot vote, all right? We say you cannot vote, okay? So this is how you do conditions in JavaScript. You are comparing two values, all right? You're comparing two values together, okay? So there's also a way to say that you want to compare three values. We have the if else if statements, all right? So let's do this. Let's try another example. If let's compare the summer, the winter, and the fall, okay? So if, let's do that, we want to compare the three values. So if weather, let's do that. If weather is equal to weather is equal to raining, okay, we create a block. We'll say do what? Let's do console.log. We are tired of alert, okay? We're tired of alert. Let's do console.log. We'll tell it to like say take an umbrella, okay? Or during fall it rains, right? If weather is equal to, let's just say fall, for example, instead of raining, so that we can compare the three values. Else, if you can see now that I added if, so that I can compare more than two values. So that's how you do it. If you want to compare more than two values, you include the else if before the next one, all right? So else if, so in this condition now, you have to also add the next condition. Else if weather is equal to summer, say summer, let's create a consistency and capitalize that, all right? So if weather is equals to summer, weather is equal to summer, we'll say do something. Let's say console.log wear a sunglasses or something. Wear a sunglasses. Okay. And then the next block, else, our last value will now be console.log. So that would be for winter, right? So if it's anything outside of fall, anything outside of summer, let's just ask it to do something. Wear a snow boots. Okay, wear a snow boots. Okay. So that's an example of how to use your if-else condition. So you can see on line 13, this is a single if block. They call it block, okay? It's a single if block just for one value. If you want to just create a condition for one value. Remember, the purpose of if-else statements is to create a condition, okay? So on line 17, if you want to create conditions for two values, you use the if else, all right? The first one is if you want to create a condition for a single value. The second one is if you want to create a condition for two values, you want to compare, right? So that's when you use if else. But if you want to compare for more than two values, you now use like the if else statement, okay? So that's how to use the possibilities for condition in JavaScript. So I think I've given an analogy as well. Now let me also move on to the next slide, which is, that's an example. We already introduced condition, okay? So here is a sample code of how to use, like, maybe combine things together. So if, for example, you want to create a function, and inside of that function, you want it to have a condition, this is how you combine it. All right. So let's copy this block of code and see the proper formatting inside of our code block. Okay. So this function, greet user function, we want it to greet a user for us, right? Okay. So that's why we are creating a greet user function. So now, there will be so many users of our game, right? And we don't want it to create it multiple times. So inside of this function, we want to also create a condition that if the name of the user is Sam, the first thing is we want to use the prompt function. So you can always play around with whatever you want your function to be like. So for this function, we want to first of all get the name of our user with our prompt that we learned the last class. All right. So when the user types in their name, okay, we are now telling our JavaScript that if that name is equal to, so this is another example of comparison operator. It's called strictly equal to. So that's the one I was referring to at the beginning of the class that I've not added um I've not added it in this class because I don't want you guys to get confused. So in this one, it's called strictly equal to. Strictly, you just want it to be strictly equal to. It's just a way to check like the equality of your operators. That is the one on the left side to be strictly equal to the one on the right side. So if that name that the user now type is equal to Sam, we say alert, welcome back, Sam, right? Else, if the name is not equal to Sam in the first condition, if it's maybe Jane or John, if it's not equal to that, we'll now say something different. So you can always play around with it, whatever you want that function and if statements to look like so that you can use your function accordingly. Okay. So that's an example of if else function. So now that we've done all that, just like brush through the basics of functions, comparison operators, what else do we have there? Events. Now we love to practice what exactly those things will look like. This one I just wrote it out. I want to show you guys how that will come to life with code example. So I'm going to comment all of this out. I don't want to delete them so that when you guys want to come back and view what that looks like inside of this repeat link that is in our slide here, you can always come back and view that. So now, the practice time would be to build a mini project, just a mini project. We want to build a rock, paper, scissors game. Inside of this rock, paper, scissors game, it will be a comparison between you and computer, and then we'll compare what both displays, all right? So, you give me 1 second. Let me take a breath, a short break yeah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So welcome back. So for us to be able to build out our rock, paper, scissors game, we need like 3 buttons. So I need 3 buttons to create my game. So in my title here, I'm going to call it rock, paper, scissors. So that's what is going to show when we open it in our browser. Excuse me. So we title that rock, paper, scissors game. So here, like I said, I need 3 buttons, right? I'm using button because that's what is going to be easy. If you can go extra mile, look for images of rock, look for images of paper or scissors, and just put them as an image here. Okay, but I want to use a button for this class so that we can reinforce all the things we've learned before now. Okay, so we'll say paper, we'll close our button, we close our button here. We'll do the same for scissors, right? I'll just copy that instead of having to type button, close it again. So I'll call this one scissors, okay? I'll call that scissors. So now that we have our buttons, this is what they look like. All right. I'm not going to do any styling in this class, okay? I just want us to have that basic understanding of how some things will work inside of this JavaScript. So I want to create a function because I have 3 buttons. I cannot write out all the instructions I need for each of my buttons to work individually. Now that's me reinforcing what we learned about function. That's why we are creating a function, okay? So I want that to repeat itself 3 times so that I can just call it inside of my button. So I created a function play game, okay? And now that inside of that play game, I want my player's choice to be represented, okay? So for my player's choice to be represented, I will have here an attribute called player choice, okay? So let's just leave that there for now. C is blanked out because we've not called it anywhere, okay? So you see how that works. Now, we want to, of course, there's something that I did not mention. I think maybe I've mentioned it, but data types. I think I mentioned in one of our classes that we have different data types. We have string. Yeah, I've mentioned it. We have string, we have numbers, we have booleans. Booleans are called true or false. So let me write that somewhere in this line. We have string. So a string would be number 2. Okay. A string would be number 2. Number would be 2. A string would be Jane, and that should be in quotes when you're writing in JavaScript. A Boolean is true, okay? A Boolean is true, or false. So Boolean can be true or false, okay? We also have null value when a value is empty. We also have something called undefined when you don't define a value. We also have something called arrays, right? So arrays are a collection of strings, okay? So that you can loop through them later on. Let me write that out. So now that we have, I'll show you what an array is inside of this place. So now we want to say let choices be equal to an array of choices. Array of choices, which could be rock, which could be paper, and which could be scissors, all right? So it's because we are having multiple choices, we have to create a list for them. So to create those choices inside of a list is called an array. So that's the best way to hold those three possible choices. Excuse me, sorry. So now the next thing will now be like, we want to, how can we randomly select, right? Because this game will be a game of you as a person and your computer choice. So we are playing this game against the user and the computer. So now, how can we know our computer choice, right? So to let our computer know our choices, we say let computer choice, we say let computer choice be equal to, so that array of choices that we created, right? We say should map it like using something called math.floor. Okay, so our math.floor rounds any value that is randomly selected. It rounds it down. So, but before we can use math.floor, we are going to do this. We also say that math.random this is how you write math.random. So first, we are going to create a random value. And then we close that. So what we are saying here in this line, this first one, the math.random is saying, oh, computer, select a random value, all right? A random number between 0 and I think 3, between 0 and 3, and then make it random. 0 and 1, sorry. Between 0 and 1, make it random. So it's always in decimal form. It's always a decimal number. So it's always like maybe 0.5 or 0.1 or 0.01, you know. It could pick any random number between 0 and 1, and then it will multiply that number by 3. So that's why we are saying you should multiply by 3, because we have 3 choices here. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So after it picks a random number and multiplies it by 3, that way we can have numbers between 0, 1, 2. So in an array, when you have an array, in JavaScript, numbers does not count from 1 to 3 like the way we have it in normal mathematics. It counts from 0, 1, 2. So in this array now, to count these elements for rock, paper, scissors, we start with 0. So we say 0, 1, 2. So for our computer to be able to randomly select any one from these 3 options, we'll first of all do something called math.random. So I'm reiterating it. So the math.random will give you a random number between 0 and 1. So it could be any decimal number. So you multiply that decimal number by 3 because we're having 3 options here, right? So now it's going to give us random numbers between 0, random decimal numbers between 0.0 whatever to 2, right? So now math.floor will help us round it down. So if it's giving us 0.05 or 0.25, it's going to round it down to 2. If we have anything like 0.0 or 0.1, it's going to round it to 0. Do you get? So that is what the math.floor also does. So why we are doing choices here is because we are picking this array, choices here, and we're telling our JavaScript to do mathematics and just randomly pick something from one of these 3. So that is how you can do that in JavaScript. You use your math.floor to round it down, but you first have to call the math.floor, the math.random inside of the math.floor. Okay, so these are values to, perform mathematical expressions like randomizing, picking a number at random, and also rounding it down in JavaScript. So that's for that line. All right. So now for that line, since we are done, we're going to say let our results be equal to an empty value for now because we don't know what that result is going to be like, okay? So it's going to be empty for now. So that's the next thing. So the next step now, we want to determine, using our condition that we learned, we want to determine if our player choice, if it's equal to the computer choice, right? Because how rock, paper, scissors is played, if the player choice and the computer choice is equal to the same thing, say for instance, you picked rock and computer also picked rock, that's going to be a draw, right? What about if the condition is different? If you picked rock and the computer picked scissors, you know it's going to be different, right? It's going to be a different result. Or if you pick paper, the computer picks rock, the result will be different. If you pick scissors and the computer picks paper, the result is going to be different. So now for rock, paper, scissors, for you to win, you know, rock can break a scissors, right? Paper, rock can crush a paper and scissors can cut paper. So now for that to happen, for you to be able to win this game, it has to fall under those conditions for you to be able to win. Anything outside of that, you lose the game. So we are going to write out those conditions. So the first thing we say that if the player choice is equal to if the player choice is strictly equal to, so we're going to use strictly equal to here, since we already learned about strictly equal to, so that we can be sure and certain that our answer is going to be correct. We already created that if block, the first block. So we say the result is equal to, we say it's a draw or a tie, anyone, it's a draw, okay? So that's that for our results. So that's the reason we make our result empty here, because initially we have to create that result variable so that every result that we get for this game is always stored inside of that result variable. If you do not create this here first, and you are saying result should be this, your code will not work. So you have to first of all declare, okay, where would my users, where would they store the results? So you have to declare it above your condition so that you can be able to use them inside of the condition. So now the next thing is our else if block. So for the else if block, what will now be the next condition? So this condition is going to be longer than the first one, all right? So to make our code clean, we'll say the player choice, if the player choice is equal to rock, okay? How did we write our rock? So it's going to be capital letter if it's equal to rock, all right? And so now that's another comparison operator. Let me just add it here. And you can use and in JavaScript. You can use or. This is how you write or in JavaScript as well. So this is and, this is or, okay? In JavaScript, you use the and operator and the or operator. So if you want to combine two things inside of one, say Jane and John. So if Jane and John is of age this, or if you want to say Jane or John. So because we want to compare two values together, the player choice and the computer choice, we are going to use the AND operator, right? So if the computer choice is strictly equal to scissors, so that's the rule of the game. So I always advise that when you want to, like, say for instance, you want to create a game, you have to plan your game. So there's something in JavaScript called pseudocode. You first of all write out the things you want your project to look like, okay? You write it in plain English. So that way it will give you how to structure and write out your, if you'll be needing a condition, if you'll be needing a function, if you'll be needing loop, because we do not treat loop in this class. That's why I say JavaScript is very broad. So there are so many other areas that we've not touched in this class that, the short summary camp will not be enough to cover all of that. So I'm saying this now, like if you want to build out a project, you have to do something that's called pseudocode. So pseudocode is you write out your code in plain English. First off, you write it line by line. Now, for this our game, we know that we want it to have rock, paper, scissors as choices. We want our computer to be able to randomly select option from our options array. And then we also want our game to have like condition statement, like, okay, if this player picks this and the computer picks this, what do we want it to see? So that's where pseudocode will help you plan your project. And that way you know how to like start structuring your programming language. So that will also help you make research. Okay, if I want to make my computer have pick random choices, how do I do that in JavaScript? You open your Google, you type that. If I want to make my computer programming language pick random choices, I'm working with JavaScript, how do I do that? It will bring it out for you to tell you that you have to use math.random. So it's not like you have to cram or memorize all the tags in JavaScript. You just have to know how to do your research. So that's the first step in terms of programming. You have to like learn how to use pseudocode, okay? That's another good step, a good practice actually. So now we've written out all our conditions. As you can see, player choice is equals to rock. If the player choice is equals to rock and computer choice is equals to scissors, or player choice is equals to paper and computer choice is equals to rock, or player choice is equals to scissors and computer choice is equals to paper, then the result will be that you win, okay? So those are the rules of rock, paper, scissors. To win this game, these are the rules, all right? So if you want to build out a game, write out all the rules in English, plain English, and see how you can write them out in programming language. So now, since we are done with all our else if block, the final condition will just be else do something. Maybe so our do something will now be result is equal to you lose, right? If it doesn't meet any of these first two conditions, then you've lost the game. Okay. So that's how to structure that. So for us to be able to successfully display this in, say for instance, our inside of our maybe HTML page, we can just do something like document.getElement by ID, the choice of the game, blah, blah, blah. Or we just do an alert. You choose player game, computer choose this, and this is the results. Okay. So let's do document.getElement by ID. Documents.getElement by ID. We'll do results. And then, or we just simply do an alert. Let's just make it an alert. Or we display the text contents. I feel like you guys already know alert. So we just display it with text content. And then we do this, all right? So we say, we write it in a string format. You choose. So that's what is going to display in our HTML. So we display that inside of our HTML. So now to fully display our player choice, there's something called $sign. That's how you display your variable when it's inside of a string. So player choice, so that JavaScript will be able to read that this is not a string anymore. It's actually a variable that you're calling. So to do that, you have to put it inside of a $sign. Okay. So you choose this, you say full stop, all right, and then you say the computer chose $sign. We just do $sign again. So now we need to call out the computer choice. You see our player choice, we've called it out here. That's our variable that we need to call inside of our HTML. And then the computer choice now will be what we want to call a game, which we created here. All right. Computer choice, we close that. So we also want to display the results, all right? So results is $sign. We call the result variable. So as you can see, it's all variables I'm putting inside of this string so that JavaScript will be able to read it very well. So that's how our function looks like. Have you seen that our function is different from what we had in our color guessing game? Because what we wanted this one to do is definitely different from what we want this one to do as well. So that's for that as well. And now we want to display this result. We want to display all of this inside of our index.html. So as you can see, we say document.getElement by ID. So let's go and create that ID result that we had at the end. We create it inside of our JavaScript and our HTML. So we'll do it in a p tag, right? And the ID will be equal to results. So that's the ID that we created here. We created in this place here. This one here, sorry, this one. So we've created the ID in our HTML. You can first of all create the ID in HTML and then call it here. So say for instance, we just want it to be like our score or something. If it was a score game, we call it score and then we call the ID in this place score as well. But the result I want to call it. So because it's not based on score, but based on results. So now that we have all our JavaScript in place, let's ensure that we call our function, because if we do not call this function, all these things that we've written here, nothing is going to work, like nothing is going to work. So for the buttons that we've created to work, we are going to use on-click buttons so that whenever someone clicks on rock, it's going to display the results. So we say play game. That's the name of our function, remember here, play game function. We're going to call it. And then we're calling rock because this is for rock. Okay. Then the next one, we're also calling on click. We're calling for we're calling play game here. Okay. So this has to be in quotes as zero because it's an attribute. So we're calling play game. I'm going to call our paper here. All right. Need to close that bracket and do the same here on click. We call our play game. We call this what? Scissors. Okay. Because this one is going to be for scissors. So now you see we called play paper scissors. Here is because of what our player choices is equal to something like that. Okay, that's why we're calling it. So I don't want to use like let me use the capital letter because that's what we're using inside of our array. So that's what we have here. And then we're going to run. Let's try to run and see if everything works correctly. So as you can see, we have 3 buttons here. When you click on rock, it says you chose rock. The computer chose rock, so it's a draw. So if you click again, you say you chose rock, the computer chose paper, you lose. If you click on paper, you chose paper, the computer chose rock, you win. You click on scissors, you chose scissors, the computer chose rock, you lose. So there are different ways you could do this. You can make it a guessing game. You can say, oh, prompts. You can use prompts so that your users can put in what they type there, and then computer will just get some zone, then you compare against prompts. You can do it however you want. Make it a standard rock, paper, scissors game. Like play around with it as much as you want. So this is just us explaining to you how to use, if else statements, condition, operators, and operator, or operator. So this is the or operator that I was telling you about, which is here. I typed it somewhere here. The or operator, we combine like three possible wins. All right. So this one now, because I chose scissors and the computer chose rock, rock can crush scissors, right? I lost the game. So if I chose paper and the computer chooses scissors, I also lose because scissors can cut paper. So computer scissors can cut me, right? That is why I lost the game. So if I click on rock again, it says, oh, I chose rock, the computer chose rock. That's a draw. If I do it again, the computer chose rock, the computer chose paper, I chose rock. So paper can actually, the paper can actually, wrap up the rock. So that's why you use it. So it's just like based on how you make it programmable. Have fun with this. I'm not going to give you any, what's it called? Take home assignments just because what? You should start building your project like Uncle Jeremiah mentioned during the last class. So you have to start working on your project, start making your research, if you have questions, just put it on the group. I'm not always fully active on the group, so Uncle Jeremiah can always answer your questions. And then for the summary of this class, to reiterate all the things we learned about function, like we did the refresher on functions, we did a refresher on buttons, on click function event. We also learned new things about conditions and how to compare values using the comparison operators. And then we built a simple tic-tac-toe, sorry, not tic-tac-toe, a mini rock, paper, scissors game. So you can make this a full-blown game, however you want. I want you to do that by the side. Later on, after the bootcamp, you can always share, oh, hey, I built my rock, paper, scissors game to look better, nicer, more aesthetically pleasing and all that. So thank you so much for listening to this class. See you around. Ensure you play your games well. I mean, your projects, play them, build them, do all sorts of nice things with your projects. Thank you. So